Yeah. So the next theory is that Chuck pushed her overboard and ran away with the circus. Or actually, probably they were having some domestic issues that turned into a domestic dispute.
Yeah.
Before we go too deep in this theory, I'm sorry, maybe you're going to talk about this in the theory. Do we know what the message that Lana left for her male friend said?
We know the gist of it, yes.
Okay. Are we going to talk about that?
We will. We'll
Okay.
talk about it a little
Great.
bit.
Okay.
Okay, so this one also is popular, and that's because it's got some anecdotal evidence to support it. So to lay the theory out is that Chuck, peeved off at Lana for some reason, like say maybe getting ready to break up with him, decides that he's had enough and he shoves her overboard, and then he drives the boat somewhere and runs away.
Okay, well, okay.
I gotta say though, if I were dating somebody and I was planning on breaking up with her,
I wouldn't get on a boat with
I
him.
probably wouldn't be wanting to have this long vacation with them. I mean, at this point, I'm done with them.
So people make a lot of strange decisions when they're in relationships. We can all look back and say, I was really pretty done with that, but why did we do that thing? Or why did this stuff happens. Logically, after the fact, it's easy to say, I should never have done that. But at the time, people rationalize and convince themselves to do a lot of funny things.
I don't know. It's pretty easy to say I'm going to break up with this guy on a boat in the middle of a lake. Like, that's a bad decision no matter what way you put it.
I'm sure she didn't plan on breaking up with him on the boat.
No, but, I mean, if you're about to do it, you're not going to go into a secluded, dangerous situation with him, probably.
So let's talk about though. I know what you're talking. I know where you guys are heading with this.
Yeah.
And let's give some of the preamble first before we get too much into that.
Okay.
So let's talk about Devin. I actually realized I've got the contents of the call or the general information about the call right here. So the call that was made to the male friend was a man that Chuck was evidently very jealous of. And she had told people that she was a cousin of hers was having a wedding that summer, and she was going to go, and her intention was to take this other man and not Chuck.
Yeah. Now, did this other man live in Detroit?
He was in the area, I believe. I mean, Chuck evidently knew him because Chuck was jealous of him, so I've got to believe that they operated in the same circles. He's not like he's a friend that lived on the West Coast or something, or far, far away.
Now, certainly if I were Chuck, I would be unhappy about that. I can see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is...
Well, so why?
So why was she going to get rid of him?
Yeah.
Well, Chuck's behavior, there were times where he may have exhibited some really bad behavior.
Chuck was kind of a bad drunk from what I heard.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So remember I said he came from a family of lawyers?
Yeah.
There is speculation that he should have been invited to practice at his father's firm.
Yeah.
But instead, he wasn't because apparently, according to some people, he had a tendency to take a 2-martini lunch that turned into a 3-martini lunch that then stretched into the wee hours of the morning, and he'd never come back to the office. So he had a habit of drinking too much.
And these people who are saying this, are they reputable sources?
They sound like they're actually a lot of family.
Okay.
They're people who knew them,
People
and
who
a lot of
wouldn't
it sounds like it's
necessarily-
from Lana's family, but I can't substantiate that because it's always just, and this happened, and this is said. It's insinuated, but the source is never cited. But he did have a tendency to turn into a total D-bag when he had a bunch of booze in him.
That does happen to some people.
Yeah.
It
It's actually
does.
a lot of people.
It really does.
Yeah.
There are at least 3 times that people have pointed out where Chuck got himself kicked out of bars because he was supposedly too drunk. But that doesn't mean he was being aggressive. That means he was cut off
he was just
and told
hammered,
to leave.
yeah.
But there's also a time where he supposedly got into a fight with Lana to the point that people who were there decided that it was so bad they had to get in between the couple. To be honest, yelling and name-calling and pointing and being just a super saucy drunk does not mean that somebody's inclined to do harm to another person while sober or drunk. I mean, I'm not defending that behavior, but it doesn't mean that it's not an A equals B scenario. But, she also said to her friends, she said that, listen, if anything ever happens to me, look at my boyfriend.
Well,
Well,
if anything ever happens to you, the police will look at your boyfriend.
yeah, they will.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen pictures of them.
Mm-hmm.
She is super attractive.
Mm-hmm.
He is not unattractive, but I can see why he would think maybe she was a bit out of his league and get jealous pretty quickly.
I could so totally see that.
I
He
can
was always
totally
looking
see
over
that.
his shoulder, I'm sure.
Yeah.
No,
And
and people have said that he was out of his league with her.
Yeah. Well, and as someone who is also kind of just outgoing and flirty by nature,
Are you talking about Steve?
Yeah, as Steve. I'm talking as Steve right now. I've been in situations where, I've definitely dated people who felt like that was unacceptable. And, you go out to the bar, you have a couple drinks, you just engage with people the way you engage with people. And they perceive that as being really flirty and inappropriate, and you get in a fight.
Yeah.
And then, things get heated. And I mean, I can also see that if the friends were drunk, they might perceive that as a very much more serious situation than it actually was.
If everybody involved is at the bar, that means alcohol is involved, which means that your memory cannot be totally trusted, and your impressions or perceptions of the situation may be skewed.
Yeah, I mean, I get overly protective of my friends when I get a little drunk. And if they're getting in a little kind of, snippy spat with their significant other, I am immediately like, oh my God, stop abusing her. That's the worst. Right? So I can understand how her friends might have perceived that, even if it wasn't necessarily true, but also it could have been true.
Here's the other. Oh, go
I
ahead.
get around this by just not having friends who are nasty drunks.
Yeah. That is an easy way to
good
solve
way.
it.
That's the best way to
That
do
isn't
it.
totally an easy way to solve it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that what we don't know, well, if anything ever happens to me, look at my boyfriend. We have no idea if she was being serious or sarcastic.
Well, do we have any idea if anybody even actually said that?
She
She said-
supposedly said that to a friend,
So, but I
and
thought-
that friend apparently has taken it to be serious.
But which friend?
After the
Yeah,
fact.
who was this friend, and when did she say it, and was she
Yeah.
even talking about this boyfriend? I mean,
Look at me,
and
hands
did
in the
somebody
air.
Totally make it
look
up?
on my face.
I mean,
I have
mean,
no idea who made this statement. Again,
Yeah.
these are things that are bandied about. Got to bring them all up. Whether I hold it to be correct or not, I don't know. There's some other things that I have a lot of hesitation with, and that's some other witnesses. And these are late breaking witnesses.
Yeah, they came out like long after, right?
Yes, so there's two witnesses that we're going to talk about here. There is one, this gentleman came forward like 9 months or 10 months after Lana and Chuck disappeared. And it is, he said that he was driving down the street and he was going by a local casino and he saw a man and a woman having a fight, and the man was waving his arms around, looked like he was hitting the woman and trying to shove her in the car, and then she ran away and got in another car and took off, and he followed that car until at some point he stopped following that car, and he was pretty sure that was Chuck. He was positive, actually. He says he's positive it was them. It was
Chuck and
Lana
Lana,
and
huh?
Chuck. But it was 9 months later,
kind of doubting that.
and it happened a month before they disappeared. So we're talking 10 months. And if you listen to this guy, I'm sorry, I don't buy him. We've seen too many people come forward after the fact in stories like this to get the media attention that I really, really am hesitant to buy his story. I mean, maybe Lana was in denial about the terrible situation that her relationship had turned into with Chuck's drinking. I don't know. That people do that. It happens. But, this guy, I can't add any credibility to him. He's not the only one who came forward, though. There are two ladies who came forward, again, 8-9 months later, after a story aired on the TV saying that they were in Huron Bay on the 11th and that they saw a boat drifting close to the rocks, and they also saw another boat speeding out of the bay, but they couldn't see who or how many people were on it, but they were pretty sure that it was C's life. Huron Bay is important to them because that is where Lana's body was found.
Yeah.
Problem is, the currents drift from north to south. So how in the hell did the boat get from the bay all the way to 11 miles northeast of Mackinac Island if nobody was on it?
Well, and also, how is it that the boat sort of drifted in close to the rocks and then reversed its course all on its own and drifted away again?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's drifting towards the rocks, and as far as a boat speeding away, well, it's water, it's a lake. You're going to see boats speeding around. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
People are on boats.
Yeah.
It happens. It's crazy, but it happens.
I've seen it with my own eyes.
So let's. So we talked about a little bit the fact that there is the phone call, and so people we're continuing on. So we've talked about these late breaking witnesses. We're still in the theory that that Chuck shoved her overboard on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I could totally see this. If he's insecure and a little jealous, he might be like, when she's not around, she's in the head, picking up her phone, and having a look at, who she's calling.
Yeah. So, it's possible that, they have he overhears part of her conversation, and then he gets angry and he shoves her overboard.
Yeah, it's possible he didn't know that he wasn't going to the wedding with her.
And just suddenly found out and lost his mind.
Well, I'm guessing that he didn't even know there was a wedding taking place.
I gotta be honest with you, I would not be super stoked if I found out that my boyfriend was taking another girl to a wedding.
Yeah, no,
Right?
I once actually, this is bad on my part. I was dating a woman, and she broke up with me specifically because I went to a wedding without her.
I would probably break up with my boyfriend.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. I mean,
Did you go with someone else?
Well, no.
Okay, then that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's less offensive.
I had my reasons for not wanting to take her with, and I just never should have mentioned.
But you
it
didn't
to her.
replace her.
I didn't replace her.
Right, see, that's not as bad.
No.
No, you
The
didn't,
bad
you didn't
part
have
is
a
you didn't
trophy
take a
plus
different
one.
date.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
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 That pissed her off big
Yeah, I
time.
bet.
But yeah, so you can see how he would be upset.
Oh, hell
so we
yeah.
can see how he would shove her into the water. It does a little bit explain possibly why she had carbon monoxide in her system if she goes into the water, because she would be trying to get on the boat, where she's at the back of the boat where the swim deck is, which is also where the exhaust of the boat is.
Yeah.
So you can see why she would be breathing that in. But it still doesn't explain to me, and I know that we're going to have this conversation again, but it still doesn't explain to me why she was buck naked.
Also,
Yeah.
why the back of her tennis shoes were
Torn. Why one
and
shoe
why
was
the
torn?
GPS was the mount of the GPS was in her shoe.
I mean that
Because if they're having a fight of that magnitude, there are signs of foul play on the boat.
yes, there would be signs
And
of
if
foul
there
play.
aren't, if it's intentional, he's gonna throw the sneakers overboard. You don't leave that stuff around if you just accidentally push your girlfriend overboard and she's dead.
Well, yeah,
You toss
exactly.
that overboard too and
Yeah,
hope for
you
the best.
actually pull the knob out and put it back in the GPS.
Probably.
And then you toss the sneaker overboard.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
what I would do.
that's my problem with that.
Yeah, well, and people point to, for this theory, people say, well, obviously Chuck was drunk that day because there's an empty vodka bottle in the trash can.
Well, that
She doesn't
was
probably
probably consumed the night before.
Or at some point in the past, it's not like she's
Yeah.
got a maid service that comes onto her boat and takes the trash away for her.
Yeah, no, I mean, it could
Who
have,
knows how long it's been there?
it could have, it could have been a half a fifth, and they polished it off the night before.
Could have been
You
even
know.
less.
Yeah.
You
couple
know,
shots.
Yeah, you don't know. I
Yeah,
mean,
you have no idea.
That
I
she
mean-
just had on the boat, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
so-
Or she could have finished it months ago.
Yeah,
And
like
it was
I
just
said,
chilling there.
yeah,
it had
could
been
have
there for a long time.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Although I would think with these two, apparently they both like to drink. You'd think there'd be a substantial stock of booze on board.
Well, I don't think there was a lot of room for that substantial stock of booze, Joe. There was pretty tight quarters in the bow of that boat.
And in addition to that, it's not as though they were staying overnight really that much on the boat. Right? They stopped and they got dinner and maybe had a couple of drinks and then got back on. And
stayed the night on the
she
boat
seemed
that
to be
night,
trying
and then
to
they
be
were
responsible.
Yeah, no,
stay
they-
with family the next day.
Yeah, they probably came back to the boat, had a shot, and went to sleep.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's hard to say. So, I mean, just the problems with the late breaking witness theories, or the witness statements, excuse me. I have a lot of issue with that. And then, I mean, this theory continues on that Chuck must have turned off the GPS and then drove the boat somewhere else. Evidently, he must have drove it north before he got off. If the ladies, the ladies who spotted the boat in Lake Huron are to be believed, then, or maybe even not that. but somehow he must have taken it north, and then that's why the boat drifted to where it is. People say this because his body hasn't been found. But it turns out bodies not showing up after they go into the water in that lake are not uncommon things.
No,
It's
apparently
like
about half of them don't show back up.
It's 750 feet deep.
It's a big lake.
It's big.
It's
lake.
cold water. He was not a small guy.
He was not,
He
no.
probably weighed more than she did, and it's possible that he sank.
Although
Well,
fat
she
float.
float.
It's a matter of his body density. I mean, if
Right,
He, if he
it's
was a
his-
fat
his
guy,
density.
and I can't tell totally. He doesn't
He
look
looked
like
chubby.
he doesn't look like a skinny guy. You know, so it's a
But
matter of density.
he may not have been as buoyant as her. Some people are more buoyant than others.
He could have been wearing clothes. He could have had weights on his feet because he was working out.
He could have been wearing concrete shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, no.
But here's the other thing: is that he might have washed up on shore too somewhere. But here's the deal: is after bodies have been in the water for a while, it's kind of even hard to recognize them. Yeah.
Well, but the that's a good point. Is that bodies do wash up, and bodies have washed up. There was a body that washed up in 2008 that they thought might have been him, but it turned out that it wasn't. They also thought that it could have been 3 or 4 other people who had disappeared in the lake. It turned out it was somebody who had disappeared a year prior.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
a big friggin' lake,
It's a
man.
huge lake. There's a lot of coastline. It could have washed up and been carried away by animals before anybody stumbled
Or
across it,
or
you know?
just sank to the bottom, and the sea life had their way with it.
Yeah, it
so
could have been.
it's
Well,
not
also-
completely crazy that the body quote unquote disappeared.
Aren't there like little shoals and islands and things like that all over the lake
Mm-hmm.
too? I mean, maybe it just washed up there and
Nobody found it, and
Yeah.
it just broke down, and
Yeah.
and nature took its course. It's
Or
possible.
it could have been he actually swam to one of those islands. He's living there now.
Still living.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
this day.
Yeah, living the life of Riley.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're right.
Okay.
Let's keep going.
Wow.
Because there's some stuff we did not address there that I want to address,
I know,
but I know
I
we're
know.
not doing that.
We're going to do that a little bit more here.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to this theory, which is it was an accident, but it was Chuck's fault because he was drunk.
Okay.
This is very similar to, you're going to find this in a couple of them. There's a lot of things that bleed through. Again, this is saying he drank all the vodka that day. He was super sauced, and he didn't knock her overboard intentionally, but somehow accidentally she went over. He then freaks out and starts throwing the PFDs at her, the life jackets at her to try to get it to her. He throws a line to her, and then when he can't get her that way, he decides to just go ahead and jump in himself to try and rescue her and bring her back to the boat.
I like this theory.
Yeah, it's entirely possible, except I can't imagine she went in and just immediately started tripping.
I can't either.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem I have with this. Otherwise it's pretty solid. But I can see that the problem is he must have been really sauced or just a really stupid person when he doesn't realize that what he can do is put the boat in neutral and,
Which it was.
Yeah, and put it in neutral and actually maybe even turn it around and like head it back towards her a little bit, I mean, there's
If
no
he
reason
was
to,
drunk,
there's no reason to
his
panic.
judgment. Well,
Yeah,
but
maybe when somebody goes overboard. There really
okay,
isn't.
let's keep this going with this. If indeed he is sauced, his judgment is highly impaired, and that logical thought may not occur. If he's not sauced, well, that's a completely different story.
Can we talk about the carbon monoxide?
Yeah, absolutely. So, she did have carbon monoxide in her bloodstream. It is. I'm going to apologize because there's a bit of science here, and I really struggled with this. She had a 13% saturation in her blood, which is where it's a little tricky because there's a certain amount of time that you have to inhale carbon monoxide or certain concentrations to reach that. So there's different ways that it could have happened, but the general thinking is that to get to 13% saturation, she must have been in the exhaust stream of the boat, which means she was hanging around at the swim deck for 15 to 20 minutes, at which point she would have inhaled enough that caused dizziness and nausea, at which point would mean that she starts to have some issues with keeping her head above water, and that would have been what caused her to drown.
And we said the swim deck is like a little. There's a little perch there, right? Off the back of the boat,
swim
there's
deck
like a
is
little-
about 8 or 12 inches above the water line.
But it's a little
It's not.
perch there.
I don't know that it's a big enough thing to actually like sit on or anything, but it's.
You could sit on it, but it's hard.
depending on the
It's a hard thing when you're tired to pull yourself up 12 inches out easy to do.
Well, but I was just thinking, I mean, she was a tan girl. Maybe she thought, oh, I'm just going to sun myself here, but it doesn't sound like it was.
The weather doesn't make
Probably
sense for that
not.
because
Yeah,
it's
that's
62 degrees and stormy.
Oh, I'm
That
falling
doesn't
into
work.
that trap. You're right. I'm sorry.
But it's funny is that the carbon monoxide, I was reading, and there's this thing, I can't believe people do this, called teak surfing. Have you heard of that?
I have done it.
You've done it?
Yes.
What's it called again?
Teak surfing, as in the wood teak. Because
Yeah.
boats used to be made out of teak. You would hang onto the teak, the back of the boat or the side of the boat, and you would either body surf or surf on your bare feet.
Yeah.
Which, knowing what a danger it is, because you're in the exhaust stream of
it's
the
not
boat,
good.
is insane to me.
Again,
Yeah.
drunk.
But people do
sorry.
it.
Well, yeah, people do a lot of stupid stuff. I doubt that she would.
I don't, and especially not in this situation.
And naked and with all her jewelry on.
Yeah.
The other thing that I will point out is having carbon monoxide in your bloodstream is not necessarily this immediate bad thing. Smokers have somewhere between 5 to 9% in their bloodstream most times, so it's not as if it's an instant death sentence.
Yeah,
I don't think the cause of death is carbon monoxide poisoning.
No,
the
drowning.
reason for drowning may have been carbon monoxide
Because
poisoning.
her
Just being mental state.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the word is, but
Disorientation.
disorientation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah,
it's. But it doesn't mean that as soon as you breathe that stuff in, you're instantly disoriented and drunk on it.
No, I mean there's carbon monoxide. If you walk downtown, you're going to be inhaling at least a bit of that.
Oh yeah, next to idling
But-
traffic.
Yeah.
At what level do you actually die?
50%.
50?
50% blood saturation
Really?
is where you die.
Okay, I'll keep it
that's instant death.
I will keep it below that.
And for my, I have to say, one of my favorite stories about the actual dangers of carbon monoxide poisoning is a Reddit post. It's one of the best of. If you just best of carbon monoxide poisoning, I'm sure it'll come up. This guy posted on legal advice because he thought his landlord was breaking into his apartment, leaving him sticky notes, and it turned out that he was so poisoned with carbon monoxide that he was forgetting that he was writing himself sticky notes and thought that it was his landlord.
Wow.
You should go read the story.
That's
But
hilarious.
this can
Crazy.
literally happen to people. So
That explains a lot.
It
I need to
does.
check the carbon monoxide in this
Yes.
house.
yeah. But so, I mean, it can be that serious without causing any other kind of side effects. It was just memory loss for this guy.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like this was prolonged exposure.
No.
It was acute exposure.
No, and again, the reason I brought up earlier the fact that her family had used the boat after the fact is that some people will say, well, obviously there must have been a leak and the carbon monoxide was spilling into the cabin somewhere. But if her family is using the boat, then somebody else should have experienced shown symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning.
A counterpoint, was her family sleeping in the cabin?
I don't know.
Because I guess it's possible that it was leaking in, but they weren't spending enough time in the actual cabin, but that she and Chuck were sleeping in
Problem
there.
with that,
But when
Devin,
they slept
is
in the
that,
cabin, they didn't have the engine on.
and the other problem is that they slept at a dock and then they left and they were traveling. They would have had to have
She was making phone calls in the cabin.
Well, okay.
Colonel Mustard.
I mean,
with
she
the
spent
wrench.
more time in the cabin than other people, so she could have been exposed to it more. I understand it's grasping at
It
straws,
really
but
is
it's
grasping
possible.
because the engine is at the rear of the boat. That's the problem with this. But the other thing that we'll talk about right now is the GPS knob.
Yeah.
So like we said, that knob is about an inch or two around. It's the kind of thing that when it comes unscrewed and it falls to the ground, it's going to fall with the shaft pointing up, which as soon as you step on it, it's going to bury itself into your shoe. If there's
gonna
if there's
feel
a
it,
seam
though.
there, oh yeah, but if it's a tennis shoe, it's not like it's going to jam your foot.
You're going to feel
through.
that you stepped on a thing.
You're gonna know,
Yeah.
which could explain why she tore out of it, because if she was walking and she stepped on it and she twists, you could see how that would cause her tennis shoe to tear in the motion. It's possible. I'm not saying it's the right answer, but it's possible.
Are we talking tennis shoes like you're wearing right now? Or are we talking
Yeah.
like, okay. I mean, it feels like it would take a lot to tear the back out of those tennis shoes, but...
You would think so, but I've had tennis shoes tear, and it's amazing. You know, it's like tearing a phone book. You see the guy do it, it's like it's never going to... Holy crap, once it starts, it just go.
That's fair.
It could have been worn, too. I mean, it could have
but they weren't brand new shoes.
Yeah, I mean...
So let's talk a little bit more, though, about the GPS unit, because there's some things about it that we haven't covered. You remember we talked about the data points? You were asking about what the heck the deal was with those.
Yeah.
So here's the numbers. So we actually have some numbers here. The GPS unit on her boat was able to track 2,000 data points or location points.
Okay. That you would input and say, show me this thing, or that it was tracking
It would
historically?
log 2,000 points.
Okay.
And it would just do it automatically, right?
Right.
Just,
Okay.
Right.
Every 10 minutes, something like that.
So whatever, it's, we'll get in some details in
Okay.
just a sec. There were 1,885 of that possible 2,000 data points logged. And like I said, there's a gap between sometime in the afternoon on the 11th and 1:30 a.m. in the morning of the 12th, which where there's nothing missing. And people point to this 115 missing location or data points,
Quote unquote. Right.
yes, as indicating that there's something going on in that time lag. People will actually say, well, obviously somebody went in there and they deleted that stuff so that you didn't know where the boat was, which is a little hinky to me.
That seems silly.
And I say that because, thanks to some forums of people who are boat enthusiasts, I happen to pick up this particular story. I got a bunch of information, which is, it's believed that her boat was probably using a Garmin 130. And if you go to look up a Garmin 130 now, be aware that though Garmin still uses the name Garmin 130, it's completely different than it used to be.
And this was one of those
I hope
things
so.
that would come standard on the boat, or come with the boat that she didn't
I would
install
think that people
post.
would outfit those.
I believe this was an aftermarket, after the fact addition. It was not, if the knob had come loose, it's not something that would be flush mounted into the dash of the boat. It's something that was mounted on after the fact on kind of a swivel mount.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the kind of technology you really don't want to buy that's installed in the boat because this changes so fast.
Yeah. No, I mean, my car's a year old, and the GPS system, I used the one on my phone because it's better than what was in a brand new car. So
Okay.
same exact theory. But these folks on this forum helped me figure out that, like I said, they think it's a 130, and that particular unit, or actually a lot of units, but this one in particular, had 3 modes. It had off, which means it didn't track any data points.
Well, it does.
It had what was called fill, which means it tracked until it filled up, and then it stopped tracking any data points. Or it had wrap, which was it tracked up until it reached almost capacity, at which point it deleted the oldest data points to have space to keep recording on top of it. It's overwriting the data.
Yeah.
What we don't know, and I want to point this out, is I doubt that it was overwriting them one at a time. Most likely what it did is it wiped blocks of memory out.
Quite possibly.
So let's just say it wipes out 200 of the oldest data points, and then the thing keeps going. So it hits capacity, wipes 200, and then keeps logging. Well, that would explain why it's this random number of 115, because it hasn't reached that minimum before it wipes another 200.
Well,
I
sure,
don't know what the
but-
minimum number wipe is. I'm making 200 up.
It's probably 50 or 100, but here's the deal. Has anybody actually published the track that was stored on the GPS?
The police have
it, and they're not
Police
disclosing
have
or
it, but it's from what I've gathered, it follows the route that they were heading to Mackinac Island, and then at some point in there, it stopped, and then it began again when the boat was drifting relatively where it was found by the Coast Guard. But here's
That's a little suspicious.
Well,
if that's the case, though, then I mean, if it's track their entire journey
with just a small interruption in the middle.
With a 6 or 12 hour gap.
But so I guess my question is was it battery powered or was it plugged?
Was it hardwired? It was a hardwired unit.
Dependent on the power of the ship. Or the boat.
And the boat was on idle, so the battery should have been charged.
It was, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the boat was on idle the entire time.
No.
Right? So if they turn the boat off and it's not receiving power, if it doesn't have a battery pack...
No, it would be wired into the boat system. I mean, you've been on a boat. You turn the engine off, you still have electricity.
Right.
Until the battery drains. But once the battery drains, you can't turn the boat back on.
But so, I mean, what's to say there wasn't an electrical problem for a minute during the middle of a storm?
I'm not going to disagree with that, because here's the thing. Lana had I don't know what it was, but she had some work done to her GPS unit, which gives me the indication that it makes total sense that one of the knobs would have come loose in 2 days of constantly driving over not smooth water. That thing's going to unscrew itself. Okay, now it's rattling along on only one screw holding it in place. I can see how the power connection could come loose.
Yeah.
Or if it's using, I believe it had a built-in antenna, but let's just presume that maybe it had an external antenna. The antenna could have come disconnected a little bit, which if it can't get any data, it can't log anything. Then let's move forward in time to now the seas are rougher, the thing is bouncing around. The connection could have rattled good enough for it to turn back on. I am making, this is pure conjecture, but I'm just looking at, somebody worked on it. It's only got one knob on it. I don't know if you've ever had anything that connects in 2 points and one of them comes loose. Things really start riding around really fast, and plugs, they come loose.
Well, yeah, they do. But was there any evidence that it maybe had been duct taped into place or anything like that?
No.
Again, nobody ever said, and the GPS unit was all duct tape on the backside.
Yeah.
They used hot glue all over that mother.
Absolutely.
Nobody ever said that.
That's what I do. Maybe some nails. Something like that.
Nail the cable in place.
I guess, yeah.
I don't find the missing data points nearly as suspicious as other people do, just based on the conditions of the boat and everything that it went through.
Yeah.
Oh, true that. Yeah, I mean, I do think that it's entirely possible that pirates actually. But I'm talking pirates. I'm not talking guys in ships like taking them over, but guys that basically. Board the boat at some place, like the last place they gassed the boat up, and borrowing the boat for something because they were close to Canada. And you may not know this or not, but there's a very profitable business smuggling cigarettes across the Canadian border. So I mean, maybe.
Are you being serious?
No, I'm serious.
Really?
They could have taken them, murdered them, not just cigarettes, even though.
It seems like a hell of a thing to do to smuggle cigarettes to throw two people. By the way, we're now in the pirate theory for anybody who hasn't picked that up.
We skipped some theories.
We just moved right into the pirate theory.
This is the pirate theory. But it wasn't... I'm thinking more like for smuggling people. If you want a boat and you want to get some people into the U.S. from Canada, let's say they're some Al-Qaeda types, who want to come into the country, and they don't really feel like walking over the mountains. They can't go through a checkpoint. So you murder a couple of people, take their boat, go to Canada, which is not at all far away, pick up your guys, bring them back to the U.S., drop them off, and then ditch the boat. That's it.
Okay, so I have a number of problems with that, which is where did they bump into Chuck and Lana to then decide that they were great marks for this situation? I mean, the only point that they could have done that, and this actually falls a little bit in line with the lead investigators theory, which the lead investigators theory is that they met somebody at Presque Isle who was not a good person, a nefarious kind of guy who left on their own boat and followed them and then did something, made her strip and then walk the plank or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, that is sort of in line with it, but
Yeah, I know you're thinking about the phone calls. I know.
But,
the
I'm not
phone calls
even,
are easily
the phone
explained.
calls. The phone calls. Let's just say it. You know what? Dismiss the phone calls. The phone calls happen before this person or Joe's Canadian pirates show up, and so all of that happens after the fact. But for what you're talking about, if you were gonna leave a dock in Canada and go to a dock in the States, it's not like there's a bajillion customs points. I mean, there's a million places and a million boats you could do it with. It just seems amazing that these guys fell into a terrorist trap.
I also like the idea of Canadian pirates because they're just like, oh, hey, sorry to bother you, man. We're gonna need your boat, man.
Hey?
Eh?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you can't have it. Oh, sorry, man, we gotta. we really need your boat. Hey, sorry, man. Here's some Tim Hortons. Man, I'm sorry, eh?
Now all of our Canadian listeners are really
I'm sorry.
pissed off right now.
This is twice now we've just gone off on our Canadian.
Sorry, guys.
Sorry. Well, come on. Even Canadians can recognize that they are not good pirates. They know. It's like Portlanders aren't good pirates. We're just too nice.
We wouldn't do that.
No.
Okay, so.
But anyway, no, I think that's a stretch. I agree. I do think the fact that she is naked but wearing her jewelry and her watch, it makes me suspect that perhaps somebody of a nefarious nature did somehow board their boat and
I guess
made
it
her
doesn't
strip
for me.
and walk the plank.
Because they didn't sleep. They were spending the night, right? They had dinner and they left.
Correct.
Right? So they were on the lake at night. So it's not so weird to me to
They
assume.
disappeared in the daytime.
Did they?
Yes, because it was 2:00 in the afternoon is the phone calls.
Right.
And they showed up at the dock to get on Presque Isle to get gas at 12:30 in the afternoon.
Right, but the unaccounted time is until when? The next morning.
Right.
So we have overnight.
Correct.
So
But why would they have not called anybody or used the radio if the boat died?
Well, maybe the boat didn't die. Maybe they were fine for a while.
The boat died.
I mean,
They took a nap. I don't know.
I mean, you're saying that they moored up somewhere and then ended up sleeping
They took a
spot
nap.
overnight, even though they had told everybody they were going to be there in 2 hours.
Did they find her cell phone?
Did
Did it have a charge?
I'm
I
sure
mean,
they
frankly,
did.
that's like a question, right?
Questions I can't answer.
Right.
No, I think they did find her cell phone. I think it was on the boat.
Well, did it have a charge? Do you know?
Probably by the time they found it, it might still have had a charge.
But I mean,
don't
so
know.
that's
But-
part of it, right? Is maybe you think, okay, we ran into a little trouble. We're just going to, you know what? The storm, it's not good. We don't want to try and dock. We're just going to spend the night.
Lana was very close with her family, so it is very out of character for her to have called her family and said, I'll be there in 2 or 3 hours, and then just not show and not contact anybody.
But if her phone was dead, she had no way to contact them. It's not, I mean, I've been...
Her phone has this thing called a charger, and I'm sure she remembers.
I don't
bringing
know.
it.
Shh, listen. I mean, things can go bad quick on the sea. Maybe they decided to have a quickie.
Okay.
I mean, she's on her boat with her boyfriend. It's not so weird to me that she's naked.
No,
that's not.
I have a